As the chaos continues unfolding overseas, Ukraine President Zelensky addressing Congress this morning, calling on the U.S. to take action and enact a no-fly zone.
Is this a lot to ask for, to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine to save people? Is this too much to ask? Humanitarian no-fly zone, something that that Russia would not be able to terrorize our free cities.
Well, he did give the U.S. kind of an option, saying that if we cannot enforce the no-fly zone, then we should supply the kind of military equipment to help them so they could help themselves. So what would that look like? And will Congress push for a no-fly zone? Here to discuss with us is retired Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army, Sargis Sangari. Let me ask you this, sir. Do you think a no-fly zone would be appropriate? Because it sounds like generally it doesn't have majority support in Congress. But in lieu of that, what should we do you think?
Well, it's good to be here. Look, it's a matter of whether or not our Pentagon is able to think outside of the box, and I don't think they're doing it in this case. Just as soon as Zelensky talked to us about the specifics of wanting to be able to get support, President Biden takes on the airways and provides a kind of a ground munition for him. So the drone that we provide for Zelensky, it's nothing more than what we just call a kamikaze type of a drone, which is used to engage ground targets. It tells me that we don't know how to counter and how to be able to support what President Zelensky is asking for. Reality is this: you can literally put into the sky a number of drones that are not going to be used for direct attacks, and you can still block the corridors of the aircrafts that are coming in from Russia to be able to engage targets on the ground. You know, we know what the TTPs for the Russian aircrafts are. We know what their attack corridors look like, or their attack runs look like. We know what their air corridors look like. There's a reason why in the U.S. civil aviation, we don't like to have drones around airfields, because we know when a drone gets into one of those turbines of an aircraft, it could bring it down. You could do the same thing. You could set up defense in depth if you want. The problem is our Pentagon doesn't think in that capacity, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to provide the simple guidance with a cheap drone technology. You could really get into the thinking process of the Russian military as to whether or not they want to sacrifice their aircraft within those corridors.
Colonel, we want to bring this up since you're speaking of the armed drones. That is part of what President Biden announced today, following Zelensky's plea for help. Let's bring that up, the additional military aid that will be sent over there. And we're hearing this information that is breaking now regarding a possible airstrike that hit this theater where people were evacuated to and were holed up there in Mariupol. According to the mayor of Mariupol, between 1,000 and 1,200 people possibly could have been inside. Would any of this equipment that you're looking at right now have stopped Russia from being able to perform that airstrike, if in fact it was an airstrike that has happened?
Well, the stingers could help, but the rest of the stuff that you have in there is nothing more than something that goes bang and makes a lot of noise and kills people on ground. What he's asking for is be able to get into the thinking cycle of Putin when it comes to use of his aircrafts to be able to control the skies. And in this case, like I said, you could literally have a cheap drone capability. You could set those up in depth from the beginning of the Ukrainian-Russian border all the way into where these target areas are. And it's going to get into their thinking cycle for the Russian military. You don't need to have the type of systems that we're looking at. Otherwise, the only other option you have is to provide those S-300s for them. Unfortunately, they do not go after ballistic capabilities unless they're a more upgraded model of it, and they cannot go after any type of a cruise missile.
All right. Colonel Sangari, thank you, sir.
Anytime.